There's just some really interesting things that happen when you use technologies in the ways that you're not supposed to. Sometimes they give you actually a more poetic, or sometimes even just a more accurate representation of an experience of a place.
In our field, understanding site conditions is absolutely critical. And so this grant was really looking at how can we use some of the new technologies that are embedded in iPads and iPhones, technology called terrestrial laser scanning, and how can we actually use those tools to start to document site conditions in order to both represent sites, but also to learn to design from them. For their transect studies, all the students use Cascadilla Creek as an area to focus on. And so we all went out together to start to explore the process of actually taking the physical scans on site.
So there are a couple things to think about when you do a scan. So for today's demo, we're just going to use this wall, just so we can get a sense of, how big is one single scan? How do I tile multiple ones together? And then what does it do well? And what doesn't it do well?
In the field of design, terrestrial laser scanning, TLS for short, is oftentimes used by engineering firms or others to create these very complex models of the site. The tools that they use, however, are very expensive. They cost anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000. So what is really exciting about the technology of TLS in iPads and in iPhones is that it's very low cost. A lot of students actually have these tools already on the phones that they might have. So it becomes something that, one, is more accessible, it's affordable, it's also very portable. So it means that you're not having to have all of these highly specialized tools and major grant funding in order to start to take these really beautiful and very detailed scans of element of site. All the students were asked to basically conduct some sort of transect study. So some students were looking at things like water or water patterns. Some students were looking at things like geology. Other students were looking at things like microclimate. What surprised me too was that I also had students who were really had actually a much greater tie to Cascadilla, where it was less of a study on geology or water, but it was related to kind of a personal history and an understanding of the site.
The transect that I created was actually the beta wave activity in my brain as I walked through Cascadilla Gorge. So I was curious about sort of moving through space in Ithaca, wearing a EEG band connected to a smartphone to see if there was any difference between taking one walkway path through sort of the more natural green space Cascadilla as opposed to maybe a more urban condition in which I would typically walk just from memory and growing up here.
Right now, there's really a big gap between fieldwork, typically, where students are out in the field, they might be measuring things or getting their boots dirty, and then when they move into the digital tools, so when they're making a physical map. And so what's powerful about these tools, it allows us to kind of connect the dots a little bit, where you have a workflow that starts in fieldwork and moves to the digital.
Anne's class was great in that there were a lot of different mediums and a lot of different softwares in which we were learning to take what we gathered in the field, learn some of these new software programs, at least new to me, and figuring out a final design or point of view. So I really enjoyed that, and as well as Anne's energy in general, and her ability to work with people doing a lot of different projects and still sort of push them and guide us in cool directions.
What's great about these tools is, one, they're cheap, they're exceedingly portable, and they can allow you to capture information at a much finer resolution in a three-dimensional format that otherwise would be really hard to record. And so what these tools allow the students to do is to start to produce much more robust, fine-scale data that they can then bring into their design work. And I think that is a really, really powerful thing. The more information that students are working with, the more specificity, the better.